We've touched already a little bit on subletting, and also we've got a bigger issue in Liverpool currently in relation to service departments, and I don't know whether if there's any companies with service departments within any of your schemes, or has there been any issues for anyone?
We had suspicions that service departments were happening at Manor Island.
Yeah.
What's a service department?
Well, you've got companies now who advertise, and they take over a few apartments, and basically they're used as a party weekend for stag weekends.
We do have one who managed to get us up at the top of the Google list.
Yeah.
So
this is a really important issue. It's perhaps declining because Engage has been fighting this for the last 4 years, really. And we've managed to get the City Council to pass a resolution which outlaws in Liverpool, it doesn't outlaw because it can't enforce it, but it says service departments must happen in dedicated blocks, not as part of a residential component. So we have an agreement in Liverpool that it's unacceptable to have service departments in any residential block of flats. Now that's there just to give moral support, and in fact it's working, because if you can show up those people, show them that this isn't acceptable at the highest level of our civic authority, they've said it's not what we want. And most of us will find that in the lease, it's not allowed in the lease. And we've actually been quite creative, but I'll let you make your presentation. And
you normally will find within the terms of the lease that you're not allowed to run a business from the lease, and it should be residential. So hopefully you might have something like that within your leases if in fact it turns out there's a problem, or someone seems to be advertising on Google or Rightmove to rent out short-term renting, which actually is what happened on mine, the house which was next to my police officer tenants, that we actually had evidence that they were doing short-term lets, which they weren't actually allowed under the terms of lease, sort of a couple of day lets. So it's worth, Google can be quite a powerful tool to use as evidence as to what an individual might be doing on a scheme, so always check that out. But again, if there's nothing in the lease that either deals with nuisance because there may be partying, that deals with you're not allowed to run it as a business, it might be immoral or illegal user if in fact there's a brothel being run, there's all those sort of clauses that you might actually be able to use. So you could have a look, or you could get your managing agent to have a look, or you could get your solicitor to have a look at which clauses you might be able to use. Again, we mentioned threat of use of other agencies. Depending on what's actually going on, the other agencies may be prepared to get involved. You may want to take a more proactive approach and actually speak to those individuals, and that's something, but again, each scheme is different, I think, as to how proactive you actually want to be and whether you want to engage in that yourself as a director and put yourself out there or not. A lot of people don't necessarily want to do that. Again, mediation may be something in the more low-level type issues if you just want to speak to the owner of the building. Courts, again, you can take action if there's breach of terms of the lease to actually take injunction proceedings to stop them doing that. You would be able to get a cost order against the owner, which hopefully you'd then be able to enforce. First tier tribunal property chamber. Again, you can look for a declaration of breach of terms of the lease, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. So those are the same options for any breach of terms of the lease, really, whatever it is. David, have you got any comments on subletting?
Yes, it was more on the service departments, because we had a situation last year when in central Manchester where an owner changed his strategy of subletting the apartments on a 6-month short-term basis to these party lets. And I take the view of shock and awe. These are people who are investment landlords who if you've got several apartments, you will probably they'll have access to solicitors, and they'll obviously be running these as a company. And so we took the approach of being very forthright right from the outset of what the breach of lease is and what we intend to do about it if they don't comply within a fixed timescale. And by following it up and taking them through an escalation process, which they obviously have been told what will happen from the outset. And we got to a final letter stage with them saying that now it is going to be passed to X law firm to enforce the forfeiture, and then it stopped. They wound the business up and returned it back to what it was set up originally. So I think don't hang around. Set the custom right at the outset. Is my advice before it infects the rest of the block and becomes a wider nuisance.
I'd support that completely. I think that's really professional and absolutely appropriate. We had problems at City Quay with a number. We probably had, I think I was aware of about 5 or 6, and we've now got rid of all of them. I nearly had a heart attack yesterday because I saw 3 women stood at the gate thinking, they're not resident. What are they doing here? Is this a party let again? And in fact it wasn't. But I'm very sensitive to it, and you absolutely have to be rigid, firm and decisive and show strong leadership from the outset, because we need to eradicate them. There's nothing good about them unless they're in their own block and they can do what they like when it's run like a hotel. But my apartment is not to be run like a hotel. If I'd wanted to live in a hotel, I could have done. Could have moved into the Hilton or near where you live. Princess Malmaison. They've got apartments at the top of the hotel. So.
But you say that that the city council set
Yeah.
up, would you get any support from the council if you made a complaint to them? Or? I don't know.
No, they'd refer you to Engage probably.
Yeah.
Because we're the experts, they've got nobody paid
Right.
to look after private apartments. But we've got a lot of experience, and I think what David and Shana said, I support that completely. And it works. It works every single time, particularly the escalation. And I think it was very creative at first. It took us a while to discover the clause in the lease about businesses. And when that penny dropped, then we were away with it. Otherwise, it was quite difficult. And we've been sharing that good practice across the city. So, but call me and I'll come.